Greetings to all of you at Covenant Church. Thanks to Maureen and Sue and Pastor Jim for inviting me to preach today. I haven't seen many of you in a long time, and I miss my frequent visits with you. But we're all staying safe at home, I hope. And I hope everybody is healthy and well and wearing your mask when you go outside. I watched a few of your last few worship services, and I see that for most part you've been going through the stories of Genesis. That's always fun to do in some of the sermons because there's so many interesting stories there. Today we're going to take up that sequence of stories that began with Abraham, and we're going to look at the story of Jacob and Esau. It comes after the story of Isaac being the sacrifice of Isaac. But today, Isaac has had two sons, Jacob and Esau, and this takes up their story. I hope you got to watch the cute video about it or either read it yourself. It's a long story. But let's think about it a minute. First of all, it's a really good story. It's interesting, and it's got interesting characters. Can't you just feel the frustration of that macho man Esau when he comes in from the field, not having caught anything all day, and he's famished, hungry, and he sees his brother cooking this delicious smelling stew, but Jacob won't give him anything unless he pays for it. He's got to be frustrated. And then there's that scheming mother hiding behind the closet in the back, planning ways to get her favorite son to get his blessing. And then there's the tension in Jacob's voice as he goes in to see his father with his arms covered with sheepskin and smelling bad so he can trick his father into giving him the birthright. And finally, aren't you moved by Esau's anguish when he finally realizes that he's been tricked out of his inheritance? The blessing he was supposed to get is lost because of trickery. It's a really moving story, an interesting story, one of the Bible's best, but it sure has our problems for us modern readers. First of all, what's all this blessing stuff? Why does it make a difference whether a father gives you a blessing or not? Our society doesn't put much stock in blessings, but in that day, the blessing, the birthright, was really important. The birthright gave the inheritance, gave the land and the property, and without the blessing, there was really nothing for the child to live on. There were no real possibilities, no power, no property. The blessing was an essential inheritance for living a good life, and there was only one blessing to give, and it could only be given to the firstborn son. That rule was just set in stone. It was the way things were. It came down from God, and it prevented lots of family disputes. But that raises for us another question. Why don't you just divide it up? That was never done. And it seems so unfair that poor Jacob didn't get his inheritance. It all went to Esau, who was only born a few minutes earlier than he was. So we listen to this story with modern ears, and we don't think much of it. We think it's unfair and not right. But the blessing was the most valuable thing you could imagine, and it was always given to the firstborn son. It was a profound story to the people listening to it. So this interesting little story becomes much more important to them and to us. If we agree then that the story of Jacob and Esau is really important, then what's the point of the story? Well, if you think about the moral of the story, it's really almost shocking. I almost can't believe this is in the Bible. The point seems to be, if you lie and you cheat and you steal, then you win out in the end. Or the crook and the scoundrel is the hero of the story. Or if you're sneaky and cunning enough, you'll get what you want by deceit. Or worse yet, God rewards those who look after themselves first. Is that what the story's all about? It's hard to draw any other conclusions when you really look at the lessons of the story. Like so many weird stories in the Bible, we can't just put simple morals on it because that doesn't make sense. But drawing a moral lesson like in a fable is not the point of most biblical stories. It's certainly not the point of Jesus' parables. So rather than spinning our wheels trying to find some moral lesson in the story, let's instead look at the characters in the story. I think that's always most important in biblical stories. Look at the people involved and how they relate to God. These two very different brothers. First of all, there's Esau, the man's man, strong muscles, hairy chest, muscular, well-built, as a man should be. That mat of furry red chest hair was the envy of all the boys, and probably all the girls too. He was out in the field doing manly things all the time, fishing and hunting and providing for the family. He loved to bring home the meat and then to barbecue it with his famous savory sauce. He had a huge collection of weapons and he showed them off. And Esau was also a ladies' man. The Bible tells us all about it. He not only had his Hebrew wife, whom he considered not very good, kind of weak Hebrew woman, so he married 2 wild Hittite women. He had 3 wives and kept them all satisfied, not to mention others he had on the side. Esau, though, was probably not very bright, a real strong, manly man, but intelligence wasn't his strong suit. But he was the firstborn. He was the finest in the finest families in the town. He was his father's pride and joy. He was friendly and outgoing. Everyone just loved him. Well, everyone, that is, except his twin brother and his mother.